So we know from the Gospels that Jesus' public ministry took 3 years to do. So it's not really a whole lot of time to do ministry for 3 years. But then the question becomes, how long did it take for Jesus to prepare for those merely 3 years of ministry? And when you think about it, it seems to have taken him 30 years to prepare for 3 years of ministry, because Jesus was about 33 when he died. And so think of that for a minute. It took the Son of God 30 years, 3 decades, to prepare for a very short amount of time of public ministry. As if to say that this preparation was much needed for these 3 years, because we know that he did a lot of things in those 3 years of ministry. And the fact is that we all know that this is the case for anything that is of great value and importance in life, is that there needs to be adequate preparation for these things to happen. Those of you who are married probably know this better than anybody, especially those who've been married for a long time. I doubt those of you who are married, when you first saw your future spouse, was like, hey, let's get married tomorrow. And then they were like, okay, and then you got married. Probably didn't happen that way, you know? Maybe it did. Let me know after Mass if it did. But no, what did you probably do? You met them, you began to share a little bit of yourself to the other person, they shared a little bit with you, you become more comfortable, and then it takes a couple weeks, couple months, maybe a few years, you begin to be more vulnerable, you start sharing your life more, you sacrifice things in your life for this other person, and after a long period of time of dating and really thinking about things and discerning, like, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, and then you prepare for the wedding, which I've never had a wedding, but I've been to many weddings, and it's a pretty big deal, so, you have to prepare for that for 10 years, and then, you got to get the cake ready, you got to get the dress, you got to get that hemmed about 100 times, and you got to get the tuxes, and you got to get the reception, you got to get the guest list down, you spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for something that's going to last about 3 hours of your life. It's like, why do you do that? It's a lot of preparation, because you realize that this is one of the most important and most valuable things you will ever do in your entire life. It's a big deal. Anything that takes that much value and time has to have a lot of preparation. Same thing for priesthood. It takes 9 years to be a priest, 6 years to be a deacon. A lot of study, a lot of prayer, a lot of preparation for something that you believe to be very valuable. If you have someone of some dignity over for dinner, what do? You probably don't go to Taco Bell and get a 12 box of tacos and eat them on paper plates. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. What do? No, you prepare a really good meal. And you get your good silverware out, and you get your fine china out, and you set the table, and you clean the house for something that lasts a couple hours, because you deem it to be that valuable. Jesus does the same thing that first Thursday night for him, his last Thursday night before he died. So we know from the gospel, Jesus knows the next day he's going to die by Roman crucifixion, and so what does he tend to do? He prepares adequately and very well. He tells the disciples, go, it's all planned out. You'll find this guy, he's carrying a jug of water. They're probably like, okay, how many people carry around jugs of water? I don't know. Go find him, tell him the master is in need of a room. He'll lead you here, go here. It's going to be well furnished, it's going to be ready. Make preparations for us there. It's all planned out in this nice upper room that's well furnished. Because why? Jesus knows the value of this final supper. So he gets his closest friends, the disciples who have been walking with him for 3 years, and he institutes the Eucharist that very Thursday evening. He says, this is my body, this is my blood. Do this in remembrance of me. Do this to remember what I am going to do for you tomorrow. And the church has done that for 2,000 years. That's why the Catholic Church has always had these great churches, these cathedrals, these basilicas, vestments, golden vessels, sacred furnishings, musical instruments, all of these things, because from the very beginning, when Jesus first made a well-furnished room for this banquet, the church has always done that, because that was a command. Do this in memory of me. It's all about preparation for what we are about to receive. So the question becomes, spiritually speaking, if the Eucharist for Catholics is the source and summit of our faith and is the most important thing that we do every single Sunday, the day of the resurrection, the question is this, and this is my question for us to reflect on and meditate on this week. If Jesus took 30 years to prepare for this, And the church for 2 millennia has tried to prepare well and set the table well for the sake of what happens at this altar every single Mass. How do you and I prepare for this as well? In other words, are we prepared? Have we set the upper room of our minds and our hearts to receive the living God every single time we come to Mass? Because as a priest, I will admit it, I see it so many times that people come in right on time, or they come in late, or they leave early. We don't meditate, we don't think about things, we're not entering into the Mass, we're just kind of like spectators. Part of what we're called to do is enter into this divine mystery, as I've been talking about the last couple of weeks. And the way that we do that is by preparation, that we set the upper room up, if you will. How do we do that? I think it can very easily be done with just 5 minutes of just coming to Mass early and entering ourselves into what's about to take place in this house of God. The fact that we enter from the chaotic world into this place where God dwells literally all the time, like God lives here. God, this is the house of God. Are we aware of that when we enter in? Are we aware of that when we leave? Are we aware of that in our disposition of prayer? Are we aware of that in preparation for what takes place here every single Mass? Because even just 5 minutes of that will just totally let us enter into this mystery of what is taking place. That's why it's the source and summit of the faith. It's where we differ a lot from our Protestant brothers and sisters, whose churches are much more simple and casual and those kinds of things. Why? Because they see this as a symbol. And if it is a symbol, if it's just bread and wine, then yeah, that kind of makes a lot of sense. But if it is what he says it is, this is my body, this is my blood, and a command to do this in memory of me, then it makes sense to make a house fitting for him to dwell in and for us to receive that great gift. So I encourage you to bring these things to prayer and to ask yourself, how am I adequately preparing the upper room of my head and my heart? Am I preparing my mind? Am I setting the table in my mind to prepare when Jesus enters into my mind through the Scriptures? Am I ready to receive him mentally? Or is it just something to get through so I can get to the Eucharist? How am I preparing my heart interiorly? Am I setting the table up? Am I making it a well-furnished room to receive God in the Eucharist when he literally dwells within me in the room of my heart? And if we're able to do that, our faith will look so much different, and it will mean so much more to us. So we're called to set the table, if you will. So may we do these things and use Jesus as the ultimate model and example as we celebrate the source and summit of the Catholic faith. May we set the table of our minds and hearts to receive him who has first loved us.